Hey kids, thanks for joining me in the garage again today. We're going to be doing a starter solenoid contact replacement on the starter out of the 99 4Runner. So like, subscribe, comment down below. See you in just a minute. All right, here we are, got this starter. So basically how this works is you've got a plunger. So this is the plunger out of the new kit. And this ring here that you can see is what actually gets worn down, as well as these contacts. You'll see there's two contacts, on either side. One of them kind of shaped like this here, one shaped like this. So we'll get this pulled apart here, and we'll show you kind of how to replace those and how this kind of works. So usually what I'll do here, I've done this a couple of times. One thing you got to be wary of are these plastic little drains. You can see this one's about ready to come off. They kind of let this breathe because it could get hot potentially. This motor has got a couple hundred amps pumped through it from your battery. So you've got these three little bolts on the side that that pop this cover off, and this is where the contacts in that plunger is located. This last one here, you'll see there's a little wire holder or strain relief, I guess, that's also on this screw or bolt. All right, so here we go. Let's take that out as well. Let's keep these all separated out so we know what's new and what's not. So there is the plunger, and so this is one of the things that gets worn. You can see, so like on this one, how that edge is kind of worn, whereas on this one, the new one, not as worn. It's nice and shiny copper. So this one isn't terrible, but it's as they get worse and worse, that gets worn out, and then also the contacts inside that we'll pull out now. So way we get these out, I remove this little cover, which is kind of busted, and so this is the nut here that the battery connects to, and then we've got a 14 millimeter. Comes off. And then a little washer. This little plastic piece also insulates. And then a little O-ring that kind of prevents water from getting in there. So, and then you can pull this contact out, if you can see that. And it also has a little piece of plastic that is insulating it from the inside, because you got to insulate against the case. The case is grounded, and so if you've got a contact from the battery touching that case, you're going to have fire. So you can see, so like here, got the old contact, if you can see that. And then the new contact, you can kind of tell there. Kind of see the difference in those. It's not super worn. You can see there's still a lot of meat left in it. I've seen these worn down to just basically paper thin. And so that's where you get that problem with the Toyotas, where you got to go and smack the starter with a hammer or something. So on the other side, if we take this little, this little contact, a nut and then a washer on top of that, and that wire comes off, and then there's another small 14 millimeter bolt, or nut, I guess, and then a little washer along with another little plastic piece. You can see this one's pretty well busted up, so we're going to be replacing a lot of this. And then this contact, now this one's a little different. Inside here, you can see this one here, there's a piece coming in from the solenoid that also is on that contact. So if we kind of weasel this thing out, there's also another O-ring too to kind of keep this all weather tight. Here's that little O-ring. Here's another little plastic piece to insulate from the case. And then the actual contact. And then that little, the nut for the post. And then that little piece that comes up from the actual solenoid. That's what energizes the magnet, which causes the plunger to plunge down and touch the two contacts. So there it is, all taken apart. And so kind of see in there just a piece of metal. All the case is grounded, and so it's just a matter of putting in new contacts. So we are going to do that now. First thing is this new plunger. So a lot of the times I'll put a little grease on there. Some of this, a little bit of high temp grease. Grease up that spring. You don't need a lot. It's probably too much. And then we can put this spring back on. And then for the post, so here's the old one. This is the other old one. And so we're going to replace those with new ones. Get this little kit here. I'll put a link down in the description for this kit. So this kit comes with new, at least one new bolt. Doesn't look like it comes with the long one, so you'll have to save your long copper bolt. But I think all these other ones, depending on the kit you get, are still the same length. So we're going to use a new bolt on the motor side contact. So the way this goes in, it'll first have this little plate in, and then the actual contact, and then you'll have a plastic insulator that insulates it from the case. So let's do that now. Oops. Butterfingers. And then that goes through here. So there you go. And that little plastic piece kind of sticks through. And then the next thing is and I'm going to, like this old one here, you can see is just cracked. We're going to replace this with a new one. That way we don't have to worry about it. And then there's an O-ring. Before you put that plastic piece on the outside, there's a little O-ring to help seal it up from the weather. Here we go. And then the next thing is a washer that goes on top of that plastic piece. And then this skinny 14 millimeter nut goes on top of that. And then we'll tighten that down. don't have to tighten it too much. It should be snug, but you've got to remember you don't want to be cracking that little piece of plastic. There we go. That's nice and snug. And then your wire to the motor goes on next. Oops. Wire to the motor goes on next. And it's this little guy right here. Got these all over the place. Oh, and before we do that, we need to put another washer on. That way everything's nice and good, solid connection. That's a 12 millimeter. And you don't have to worry, you can tighten this one up fairly snug. You know, obviously it's locked down below with that other nut. So, and you can see that's all in there nice. If you were to, for instance, put this plunger back in, it should contact that really nice. All right, now for the other side. This side is similar, except you've got this kind of, you know, half moon shaped, a little larger contacts, so you can kind of see here is the old one compared to the new one. Same kind of shape there. And this one is the long bolt that goes in. So you'll put those in there, and you might want to it'll get drawn in. You can see there's a little serration on the bolt there. See the little serration. And so that, you know, makes it so this contact doesn't spin around. And so again, we've got to have a piece of plastic to insulate it from the case. That'll go in next. Slide that in. And then another little O-ring will then go over that. And then we've got this kind of nut. And now one thing I didn't have before was this little, kind of a little plastic weather seal. This came off of the other one. And so you can see this kind of goes around the end of this teardrop shaped plastic insulator. See if I can get that on. Yeah, there we go. That helps seal it up. And then we can put that on. Got the O-ring on. That'll go over the top there. And then that clocks, there's a little hole that clocks into. There we go. And then a washer. And then we've got a big 14 millimeter nut. The one on the other side is much thinner, so that's how you can kind of tell the difference between the two of them. So let's get that tightened down. Now, this one you'll want to tighten down pretty good, because if you remember that serration, it will kind of snug that contact in. So, not sure if you'll be able to see this, but as you snug this down, it'll pull that contact so it won't spin. You do have to be careful though, because again, you have a piece of plastic there. You don't want to break that piece of plastic. So that's right there is pretty good. Maybe give it another little turn. There we are. And so you can see again, if we put the plunger in there, just, you know, you push it down and it's those contacts, those new contacts in there. So now's the point we do actually want to put the plunger in. And so you see how this works is, you know, this actually comes from the starter relay. And so when you turn the key, fires the relay, which then energizes the solenoid, which causes the plunger to plunge down. And then the gear engages your flywheel. And at that point, you know, since that plunger is down, the flywheel's engaged, starter motor spins, and then that spins against your flywheel to crank over your engine. So that's kind of how those starters work. Pretty understandable once you think about it, I suppose. So next thing to do is get the cover put on. So let's go ahead and handle that. This cover, I don't know if I covered this before, has a little piece of plastic. It's on, you know, I don't know if they make a seal. I'll look, and I'll put a little link down in the description if I find a seal for that. That you probably should replace that, because you want to keep this. One of the reasons these copper contacts kind of wear out is you get a little moisture in there, and there's hundreds of amps going through these, and it just eats away at the copper, you know, because as the plunger comes down and hits those contacts, it arcs. And so it's almost like, you know, a welding spark, you know, because there's a couple hundred amps going through there. You know, most batteries are, you know, I don't know, 600-700 cold crank amps. So just think about that going through these contacts. That's why they slowly get eaten away like this. You know, that arc basically is almost like a welder eating away at that. So we'll get the cover back on. And we're ready to rock and roll. So don't forget, on this other one near the starter motor wire, you'll want to have this little stress relief going on there. And last little bolt. I guess the final step is to get this little piece of plastic cover on there. So these usually are, you know, not ripped like this one, but this just go over the wire there, slip around, kind of has a nice snug little fit there. Protect that from touching anything. So yeah, the only thing left really is this little nut here that, you know, the starter wire connects to. So there you have it. If you like what we saw, hit the thumbs up. If you're just watching for the first time, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Keep on wrenching.